I will be the moderator of today's student-led press conference. My name is spelled R-A-W-A-N, and I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. What we saw happen on April 24th was a shameful overstep of power from the university that resulted in the militarization of our campus and the arrest of dozens of our students and community members. I want to be clear that this excessive show of force called upon pro-Palestinian students is nothing short of a university-sponsored state repression. Police and state troopers were armed to the teeth, ready to brutalize and arrest students on the presence of speaking up against the genocide in Gaza. Whether or not we complied with their rules. From Vietnam to South Africa, we've seen student movements serve as the consciousness of this country. And while these institutions of power may try to suppress us, the people have shown throughout history that our voices will be heard. We are here today to provide students and community members with the platform to speak about their experiences and of having the university turn against them for standing up for what they believe is right. I will first begin by introducing Fayaz Shah, CAIR-Austin Board Chair.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Fayaz Shah, F-A-Y-Y-A-Z, last name S-H-A-H. And on behalf of CAIR, I welcome and thank the media who is here today. I would like to discuss two critical issues today. First, as both a member of civil rights organization and an alum of UT Austin, I am deeply troubled by the recent measures taken by the university to curb the free speech of students advocating against genocide in Gaza. UT President, in his statement on April 25th, said that they did not allow Wednesday events to go on as planned because university had credible indication that students were trying to severely disrupt the campus for a long time. This preemptive censorship, and that is exactly what it was, preemptive censorship, sets a dangerous precedence in which administrators can easily suppress any free speech they disagree with without having to show evidence of harmful behavior. In reality, it was UT presidents and governors' actions for calling in the overwhelming force that disrupted the campus life. Second, we strongly condemn governor's shameful attempt to stifle students' voices by branding peaceful protests against Gaza genocide as anti-Semitic. It is imperative to highlight insightful observations by Professor Jeremy Suri, Mark Brown Distinguished Chair for Leadership in Global Affairs, Professor of Public Affairs and History at UT, and a member of Jewish community who considered himself as a proud Jew. He observed the protest for about an hour. He said, and I quote, "I did not hear a single anti-Semitic statement the whole time," unquote. He further said, and I paraphrase, that saying there is anti-Semitism at places where it is not is a real disservice to Jews like him, as it takes focus away from places where there is real anti-Semitism. These observations from a distinguished Jewish UT professor and the fact that many of the protesters were Jewish, and you will hear from some of them today, clearly shows that the governor's attempt to brand these peaceful protests as anti-Semitic is completely and absolutely ridiculous. In the end, I demand from UT as an alum and as a civil rights activist to live up to its core values. Its core value of freedom to speak the truth and express it, its core value of responsibility to serve as a catalyst for positive change in Texas and beyond. Living these core values will mean for UT to allow its students to express their views regarding what is happening in Gaza and to remove suspension of the Palestinian Solidarity Committee, PSC. Thank you.
I now want to introduce Dr. Pauline Strong, the president of the UT chapter of the American Association of the University Professors.
Thank you. My name is Pauline Strong. I'm the president of the UT Advocacy chapter of the AA. I'm president of the University of Texas Advocacy chapter of the AAUP, the American Association of University Professors. We are an organization that stands for academic freedom, shared governance, and due process on campuses. And we were appalled by the actions of President Hartzell and the police he called to campus on April 24th. As the previous speaker said, by calling the police prior to the beginning of an event, Hartzell preempted their right to free speech and turned what was planned as a peaceful demonstration into a violent confrontation. We have written a letter of no confidence in President Hartzell that discusses this action as well as the action he took on April 2nd to close the Division of Campus and Community Engagement and lay off 40 or more staff who had been working hard to comply with SB 17. This is a time when we need experienced staff on hand who can work with students to support them and to help them understand each other. We have given our letter of no confidence to President Hartzell this morning. It is signed by over 540 UT faculty. We ask the Faculty Council, in their role of representing faculty, to take this letter very seriously and to act upon it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Strong. I now am going to introduce Amr Kadumi from our very own Palestine Solidarity Committee.
Hello, my name is Amr Kadumi, spelled A-M-M-E-R, Q-A-D-D-U-M-I, a member of the Palestine Solidarity Committee. On Wednesday, April 24th, the Palestine Solidarity Committee at the University of Texas at Austin planned a day of action on campus. The demonstration was set to take place in a public space and last throughout the day. It was set to feature speakers from a range of backgrounds to discuss pertinent topics surrounding the Gaza genocide and our role in opposing it. It promised to be yet another powerful demonstration against our university's complicity in the ongoing genocide. It promised to be peaceful, as all of PSC's demonstrations have been. What was supposed to be a moment of unity for UT's Palestinian community, filled with educational teach-ins within a safe space for Palestinian students and their allies, became a fight for the preservation of our rights as students. What we saw unfold was not a confrontation or a clash with law enforcement. The sheer mass of officers, the army of state troopers armed as if preparing for war, were all indicative of a premeditated and coordinated attempt to viciously suppress our voice. The only escalation that happened that day is a result of this excessive show of force that turned into a senseless rampage where officers arrested not only protesters, but bystanders, uninvolved students, and even journalists. The complete lack of any restraint from UT police and President Jay Hartzell's subsequent commending of the incident are all dark indications that our university's leaders, that the safety of our students does not take precedence for our university's leaders. The unlawful mass arrest on Wednesday is a part of a troubling pattern of disregard of threats to the safety of our community, including our harassment by former Israeli soldiers and the stabbing of a Palestinian in West Campus. After more than 200 days of activism and enduring such hardships, advocating for the noble cause of justice and liberation for Palestinians, UT administration chose to enact their most brutal mistreatment of students yet. Our administration is responsible for instigating the brutal crackdown of our demonstration by the multi-agency force it called to our campus. Our administrators subjected their students to police brutality and robbed us of our fundamental right to speech and demonstration when they preemptively ordered an army of officers against us. Our president, Jay Hartzell, chose to endanger his own students instead of hearing and considering our demands. However, our reason for demonstrating and the reason we're here today is not simply to highlight the injustices on our campuses, but to continue advocating for the people of Palestine as they continue to endure a horrific genocide. Within the last few days alone, over 400 Palestinians were found in mass graves near Nasser Hospital in Gaza. Israel continues to restrict access to aid. They continue to starve the people of Gaza. They continue to use recordings of crying infants to lure Palestinians to their deaths. They execute innocent Gazans with their hands tied behind their backs. They continue to allow settler violence to run rampant in the West Bank. And our leaders and institutions continue to remain complicit. Our government just approved another $26 billion to the apartheid regime a few days ago, knowing full well it will be used to slaughter Palestinian children, bomb schools, and bomb homes. As students across the country rise up to demand that the universities divest from death, being met with mass arrests and suspensions like those at Columbia and utter police brutality at Emory, our united struggle for freedom for the Palestinian people thwarts these attempts to subjugate our students to intimidation. PSC's recent interim suspension as an organization is yet another installment in these attempts to suppress the broader student movement. It is a sign of the strength and effectiveness of our Palestinian narrative and activism. We in our community will not stand for UT's egregious behavior towards their students and nor their continued investments into the killing of Palestinians. We demand full accountability for the abuse of power and unlawful mass arrests conducted by UT police and ordered by UT administration. We demand that our university disclose their investments and divest from all companies that profit off the murder of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. We are grateful for the support of our community in this moment. We will remain steadfast to call for divestment, continue to call for divestment and accountability, and continue organizing for a just and liberated Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now I want to introduce Serene Kawasmi, a student who was arrested.
My name is Serene Kawasmi, that is spelled S-E-R-E-E-N-Q-A-W-A-S-M-I. I am Palestinian American and I was arrested on April 24th. Many of us can't decide whether we are shocked at the brutality that took place on our campus or if we should have expected it. Everywhere you turn, you will see the motto proudly displayed on our campus, "What starts here changes the world." When I wrote my admissions essay just 2 years ago, I was asked how would UT Austin prepare me to change the world. Little did I expect that my own school would arrest me for taking a peaceful stand against the genocide of innocent, unarmed civilians. The itinerary for April 24th included study breaks, teach-ins, an art workshop, and guest speakers, all which are very non-disruptive forms of protest. However, the peaceful intentions were interrupted by the presence of unnecessary police force. Their aggressive and unwarranted response was extremely disruptive to our cause and our campus. When I read the news, I see the headlines, and they are all solely focused on the free speech issue instead of the original purpose of the protest. Let it be known, we stood there on Wednesday to make our voices heard. We know our rights, and we want an end to the apartheid and genocide of Palestinians. We Americans do not want to be complicit in ethnic cleansing. It is very upsetting that our rights as students of the campus were infringed on, but it is even more upsetting that we can't speak about the violations of basic human rights on the occupied land of Palestine that has been happening for over 75 years. Yes, my fellow students and I experienced brutality and disrespect on April 24th. However, this doesn't even compare to what our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Gaza specifically have been experiencing every single day for the past 7 months. At the end of the day, I went home and I was embraced by my supportive family and friends. The issue of Palestine resonates so deep within me because one day my own father was a little boy in Jerusalem scared of the big men with the guns. For generations, my family has been subjected to the fearful reality of living under the occupation. Innocent mothers and babies are being massacred in record numbers every day. Families are torn apart, children are starved to death, civilians are found buried alive under the rubble, and mass graves have only just recently been found uncovered. Meanwhile, the whole world is idly watching. They are our voiceless victims. Palestinians deserve the same human rights you and I share. They deserve a life of dignity and equality. So please do not let what happened on April 24th break your spirit. Keep pushing for the cause. Keep protesting. Keep talking. Keep boycotting. Do not allow your elected officials to think we will be complicit in this genocide. May we strive for a peaceful future, and thank you.
Thank you, Serene, for that very powerful speech. I now want to introduce Hannah Yoshimoto, a member of Jewish Voices for Peace and one of the community members that was arrested.
Good morning, Chag Sameach, or Happy Passover. My name is Hannah Yoshimoto, Hanayosshimoto, and my pronouns are they, them. I am a queer Okinawan and Jewish resident of Austin, Texas. I am here today in solidarity with Gaza and the Palestine Solidarity Committee, a UT student group that has been unjustly suspended after organizing a peaceful gathering on campus. I am one of many people who was arrested on Wednesday for protesting the genocide. It is not lost on me that I was arrested during Passover, a Jewish holiday that commemorates when we as a people were liberated from slavery. As a student from Pitzer recently said, to be Jewish in a time of genocide means that you have a duty and a responsibility to speak up. I came to UT on Wednesday to participate in the Popular University Educational Programming coordinated by PSC. I wanted to become a more informed ally and comrade. Contrary to what you may have heard, the energy on the lawn was lively and inviting when I arrived 15 minutes before my arrest at 4 p.m. What I experienced was a diverse group of people who were united by one purpose, to demand that UT divest from Israel. The only threat to my safety that day was the disproportionate police presence ordered by UT administrators. After being on campus for 15 minutes, I was grabbed by my keffiyeh and my neck and dragged to the ground. At the time of my arrest, I was following orders and walking backwards, pausing only because there was a chain behind us that I didn't want everybody to trip over. I was cuffed with zip ties that were so tight that my hands went numb for over an hour. There have been many claims that last Wednesday was fueled by anti-Semitism. This is a false narrative that is pushed to discredit the movement centered around Palestinian liberation. Jewish students, faculty, staff, and community have been loudly supporting local Palestinian organizers. It is not anti-Semitic to protest the actions of the Israeli government, which is waging a genocidal campaign on Gaza. We were simply demanding that the university divest from Israel because it is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. While my arrest and my 17 hours in jail were traumatizing, it is nothing compared to the heartbreaking reality that the people of Palestine face. I spoke to my friend Mohamed yesterday, who is currently stuck in Rafah waiting to evacuate. He asked me to say the following. I know very well that our messages from Gaza have become boring to many in this world. We feel misery and hopelessness. We only think how to eat, how to drink, and how to live. We do not think about our dreams anymore. We ask for the simplest rights, which are to live in peace and security. The Jewish tradition, and especially the holiday of Passover, calls me to stand against oppression wherever it may occur, and to organize for the freedom of all people. It is because of my Jewish identity, and not in spite of it, that I have been compelled to join this interfaith, multiracial movement for Palestinian freedom. I refuse to sit by and be silent as a genocide is being committed in my name. History has shown us time and time again to follow the lead of incredible student activists like the one standing behind me, and that is exactly what I will do. Permanent ceasefire now, free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I I now want to introduce Jumana Fakhruddin, a fellow student who was also arrested.
Hello, my name is Jumana Fakhruddin, spelled Jumana-Fakhreddine. So I just wanted to start by saying that for more than 75 years, Palestinians have been oppressed under an apartheid colonial regime. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th alone. But it is important to note that Palestinians have been under the brutal colonial boot of Israel since 1948. What happened on Wednesday 24th was not the first protest for human rights on our campus, and it certainly will not be the last. However, the escalated response by our university shed light on the reality of UT's administration on its students' right to exercise freedom of speech and assembly. PSC had outlined a schedule of teach-ins, art, and pizza on our lawn in a peaceful educational setting that was set to end at 7 p.m. The university's claim of ulterior motives and fear of its students are shameful, defamatory, and false. As students who grew up with heroes like Ahmed Tamimi and stories like that of Muhammad al-Duraz, we could not stay silent. But not only that, it is our duty to not stay silent. We organized a respectful way to express our First Amendment right to ask our university to divest from arming the illegal settler state of Israel. UT provides around $45 million in investments to Israel, while at the same time, the bodies of hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians were recently found in mass graves in Gaza. As an institute of knowledge that is supposed to uplift the voices of its students and allow for the sharing of ideas, what happened Wednesday was shocking and a betrayal. Especially as a university who preaches giving students a platform to change the world, but when it comes to doing just that, they release armed forces to attack and demean us. Being grabbed, dragged, bruised, and arrested for being on our own campus and speaking against a genocide felt beyond surreal. I was carried and zip-tied by cops who gave zero information on why we were being arrested. Some of my fellow Muslim students who wear the hijab expressed to me how they were denied long sleeves even after expressing the religious need for them. Also, after having her torso exposed in front of male officers and trying to pull down her shirt, the police told her to not move or they would see it as a threat. Some of us had to strip in front of officers, which also felt extremely dehumanizing. In the temporary holding room, several of us asked for water or Gatorade as people were feeling lightheaded after being slammed to the ground by police, but were denied anything to drink and were ushered to the sink in the bathroom for water. We were then taken into individual cells, which brought on psychological and emotional stress from having to sit between four walls for hours with no communication or updates about what was going to happen to us, no way to tell the time, and terrible headaches that kept many from sleep. They criminalized us for exercising our right to protest and calling an end to a genocide. Nonetheless, this is only a sliver of what innocent Palestinians prisoners have to endure when they are randomly taken by the IDF for existing peacefully and for simply being Palestinian. Most of us were in there for less than 1 day and are finding it hard to jump back into the normality of our daily lives. We can't even imagine being in there for years for having done nothing but exist. Wednesday's use of excessive force attempted to intimidate us into silence. However, this only revitalizes the determination within all of us to continue to speak in the name of truth and justice, until Palestine and all oppressed masses of the world are free.
Thank you, Jumana. Now I will introduce Hikma Jamal, a student who was arrested.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hikma Jamal. It's spelled Hikmahjamal. I'm a student at the university across the street. The University of Texas at Austin stands with a core purpose, and I quote off the university website, to transform lives for the benefit of society. Through the core values as read below: learning, discovery, freedom, leadership, individual opportunity, and responsibility. Allow me to do a deeper dive into the practical application of these values on the UT campus following the October 7th attacks on the Gaza Strip. The purpose of this press conference is to discuss the shameful, unjustifiable orders of violence courtesy of the Texas Governor Greg Abbott and University President Jay Hartzell. On April 24, 2024, the campus organization, PSC, or Palestinian Solidarity Committee, organized a peaceful walkout to protest the 205 days of gruesome murder of innocent lives of the unborn, infants, mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons. Like all PSC events, the walkout served the purpose of educating the student population of the unjust actions Israel is committing as the minute passes with the support of the United States. I recognize these efforts as a representation of the university's value to learn and discover. This Wednesday, I made my way to campus where I am a tuition-paying student to not only exercise my First Amendment right of free speech, but also fulfill the university's core value of freedom, or as I quote again off the university website, freedom, to seek the truth and express it. Rather than commending the brave young men and women speaking against injustice, the university, in collaboration with UTPD, APD, and state troopers, marched onto our campus grounds in full riot gear, prepared to storm into crowds of students. Although PSC posted, and I quote, as a reminder, please be sure to respect our place and listen to organizers in order to help keep us all safe, officers handpicked Ammar Kadumi, a student leader and PSC steering member, in the moments he was ushering the crowd to disperse, violently dragging him from his peers and placing him under arrest. I recognize this as an infringement on the university's value of freedom and leadership. I too am standing before you today as one of the many unjustly arrested on April 24th. In a moment of exercising my right to freedom of speech, I found myself on my knees enclosed in a circle of large, armed troopers shouting at me. During my time at the Travis County Jail, I experienced dehydration and a lack of regard for my religious obligations. I wasn't provided a drop of water until 9 hours into my arrest, in addition to the time I spent protesting under the hot sun, causing me to be severely dehydrated, as well as impacting my ability to observe my prayers through the obligatory cleansing ritual, wudu. The lack of water wasn't the only barrier I faced regarding my religious obligations. Like my Muslim peers, I requested necessary garments, including a hijab, to fulfill my 5 daily prayers, only for my necessities to be dismissed and passed along from one officer to another, leaving me with no option but to pray sitting down, fully exposed, without a hijab, arms out, and no prayer mat. The lack of regard for my prayer was absolutely unacceptable. I may not be of Palestinian descent, but as a young Muslim woman, I feel the responsibility to stand by my ummah, my people. As a student of the university across the street, I plan to fulfill my responsibility to serve as a catalyst to positive change. I joined the walkout because I had the responsibility to stand up for what is right and for those whose lives lay in the hands of sickening settlers. It doesn't take decades of generational displacement and pain for one to recognize the pain of the Palestinian people. It takes a cold, numb heart and murderous mind to witness a genocide take place and fight for its longevity. To ignore the calls for a ceasefire, but instead call for the bombing of a mother who has yet to meet the unborn child in her womb. Let me make one thing clear. You cannot arrest an idea. You cannot imprison a belief, and you cannot silence a movement. To those who seek to silence us, I say this: we will not be intimidated, we will not be deterred, and we will not stop until justice is served. I want to make it clear from the outset of my arrest that my arrest was not an act of defiance against authority, but rather a stand against the ongoing injustices inflicted upon the Palestinian people. It was a stand against the occupation and against violence. It was a fight for my Muslim brothers and sisters who are witnessing their family names be wiped off the registry as our university antagonizes them. I call upon the University of Texas administration to uphold the values of learning, discovery, freedom, leadership, individual opportunity, and responsibility. We, the students, will continue to fight to reclaim Palestinian land. What starts here changes the world. Free Palestine till it's backwards. Ceasefire now.
Thank you, Haikman. I will now introduce Mia Cisco, yet another fellow student who was arrested.
Hello, my name is Mia Cisco, and I'm a Ukrainian American and Muslim student at the University of Texas at Austin. I am here because I firmly believe that all forms of intolerance and hatred are unacceptable, including every instance of religious intolerance. Whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or any other form of religious bigotry, it has no place at our university or the world at large. Islamophobia underlies and continues to show in the reaction to the Palestinian liberation movement. The treatment of Muslim protesters is emblematic of the prevailing wave of Islamophobia, permeating both the conflict itself and the broader narrative surrounding Palestine. I've both witnessed and experienced instances of Islamophobia and religious bigotry at the hands of law enforcement. During my arrest on Wednesday, my hijab was forcibly removed as I was placed into the police van. Despite my repeated pleas upon arrival of the station, the officers refused to replace my hijab, instead shoving it in my pocket as they patted me down, and I remained deprived of my hijab for hours. After hours of requests and a call from a concerned citizen about the treatment of hijabis, a police officer finally permitted me to wear my hijab again. My hijab isn't just a symbol of modesty, it's a source of pride and a symbol of resistance as a Muslim. Police stripping me of it is profoundly degrading and dehumanizing. Such actions are outright bigoted and can never be tolerated. And still, my most important message is that this violence, pales in comparison to the deadly Islamophobia endured by our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank. The Israeli occupation forces routinely weaponize this religious hatred, with tactics including assaults on worshippers inside Alaska, bombings targeted other mosques, and heinous acts of raping and declothing Muslim women. This weaponization, deployed against Palestinians, is similar to other genocidal military forces throughout history. Any form of religious oppression is wholly unacceptable and contributes to the utter dehumanization of Palestinians. Tactics of religious denigration have also been used against Jewish anti-Zionist protesters by the United States Police. It is imperative to combat all forms of discrimination, whether based on ethnicity, religion, or any other grounds. The state-sanctioned violence I experience, which Palestinians have long endured, has historically been deployed to oppress religious minorities. These arrests underscore the imperative to resist racist, imperialist violence in all forms. I was once asked, what ancestors brought you here to fight for Palestine? As a Ukrainian woman, I can name the ancestors who did. When we discuss the war in Ukraine, we celebrate Ukrainian culture and resistance. I urge everyone to extend this sentiment to the resistance of Palestinians. Palestine, with its rich culture and history, deserves admiration and celebration. When we demand respect for all humanity worldwide, we must start with ending the genocide in Palestine. It's time to divest from Israel, enact a ceasefire, and celebrate the courageous Palestinian people. I will end by saying God is great, Allahu Akbar.
Thank you, Mia. I will now introduce Anne-Marie Jardin, yet another student unjustly arrested.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Anne-Marie, spelled A-N-N-E-M-A-R-I-E. Jardine, spelled J-A-R-D-I-N-E. I am a Mexican and Mediterranean American graduating senior at UT Austin. On Wednesday, April 24th, I was arrested on my own campus in my hometown of Austin. I was randomly plucked from the crowd by Officer Chad Martika from UTPD, soon followed by a group of UTPD yanking me to the ground. They then dragged me by my hair and arm multiple yards to throw me face down into the dirt. I then spent roughly 17 hours in Travis County Jail, where I was denied medical care for my open wounds caused by DPS, denied drinking water, forced to sit in my period-stained clothing and period blood, denied period products, and received no sanitary or hygiene products, not even soap, forcing me to have dried period blood on my hands for hours. I went to the hospital following my release, and I have a sprained neck and arm, swollen ribs, and strained lower back. The doctor had assumed I was in a car accident because of the severity of my injuries that I sustained by the hands of UTPD and DPS. Surviving the end of last week was a living hell, but I am healing. I have the privilege to leave such an environment and take a shower, have clean drinking water, eat a nutritious meal, have access to period products, seek mental health services to help me heal from what I experienced, and ultimately come back to my home. Those in Gaza do not. Gazans are subject to cruel, dehumanizing torture daily. Homes, stores, churches, mosques, hospitals, schools, and universities alike bombed to ash. Mass graves with hundreds of bodies, regardless of age and gender, found tortured with organs missing. Aid trucks with life-saving supplies and food being blocked from entering. Male IDF soldiers posing with women's lingerie and intimate clothing from the homes they just attacked. Children's innocence being stripped away because all they know is fear and violence. Wednesday, what was planned to be a peaceful protest meant to amplify their cries left students like me battered and bruised because the exact apartheid we are fighting would rather brutalize us than fix the injustice they are creating. This has been and always will be about the liberation of Palestine. It's about Gaza and the end to this genocide. UT Austin is actively complicit in this genocide and openly on the wrong side of history. The way April 24th unfolded wasn't just simply infringements on our First Amendment rights. We were targeted for standing up against what UT is doing and standing up for Palestinians. Jay Hartzell himself demonized us and plotted an attack before we had even stepped foot on campus that day. We are constantly accused of being an anti-Semitic, hate-filled, dangerous group of students and people. However, none of this is true, and our demands are clear. We want UT to divest from this war, a permanent ceasefire now, and for an end to this genocide. And many years from now, when the war is over, and people like Jay Hartzell and Greg Abbott, as well as institutions like UT, have no interest in the apartheid state of Israel anymore, they will change their story. They will use us, the very students and community members they abused, to boost their reputation. They will flip the narrative that they were protecting us, that they fostered a safe protesting environment, and that ultimately they were on the right side of history. But we will never forget. I will never forget how they used violence against me, my fellow UT classmates, and community members. We will never forget how they put their own personal interest over the country of Palestine and their citizens. We will never forget how they not only armed this genocide, but gladly brutalized their own students and faculty to appease Israel and Netanyahu. They will never be able to wash off the blood that is on their hands. Thank you.
Thank you. I now want to introduce Citlali Soto Ferreta, a very dear, close friend of mine who has been side by side organizing with me and who was arrested on Wednesday. Saludos. I am Citlali Soto Ferrete. Citlali-Sotofferate. I was born and raised in Austin, and I'm a 22-year-old senior at UT. I was one amongst many arrested demanding our university divest from the genocide in Palestine. On Wednesday, April 24th at 1 p.m., I stopped by after class, planning to visit the lawn briefly and then go to my next class for my final at 2. These plans were ripped from my hands, much like when officers ripped me off my feet and arrested me. There's a video of them parading me on Speedway with their batons, rifles, and horses, while I'm holding back tears. Tears brought on by frustration and anger, fear and sadness. Many of our peers are reeling from shock and trauma, along with physical injuries. I am personally experiencing a lapse in executive functioning. Coming back to campus for my final on Friday, I felt shaky and close to a panic attack. The university has had a double standard between the way it has treated pro-Israel students and pro-Palestinian students. When Palestinian students have asked for support when facing hate crimes, the university has paid no attention. The atmosphere at the university is very threatening to people of Muslim descent and their supporters. A student of Lebanese descent said she heard pro-Israeli protesters mocking her while getting arrested and calling pro-Palestinian protesters terrorists. I was one of the few without significant injuries. In jail, a black student was accused of drug use because of their concussion symptoms brought on by police brutality. This police brutality is common amongst Austin police and Israeli occupation forces, who have trained together in exchange programs in the past. We were denied privacy, hygiene, religious freedom, and our very existence was grounds for humiliation. We couldn't even wear our own underwear. Our rights were violated. This is the reality that Palestinians face every day between their schools and hospitals being bombed, their water being cut off, their food being seized, and being systematically stripped of their humanity. Every day there are more mass graves found of children and families, medical workers, and patients, with their hands zip-tied behind their backs and buried alive. Why can the U.S. government and our universities get away with supporting and promoting this depravity? Why does Netanyahu call us Nazis for protesting the genocide of a whole people, while all universities in Gaza are flattened? Where is the morality? Where is your humanity? My parents taught me humanity, and my Palestinian friends continue to teach me hope, faith, and belief in the good of the world. My history is tied to past student movements. My dad had friends who were shot in the Tlatelolco massacre and disappeared by the Mexican government in Mexico City in the 70s. As students, we learn history in the ivory towers of academia. We learn our past and how not to repeat it. However, we are brutalized when demanding the university to disclose where money is allocated and divest from the death of Palestinians in Gaza and Palestine as a whole. Just a few weeks ago, SB 17 dissolved UT's Division of Campus and Community Engagement, dismantling institutional support for marginalized students and firing over 60 staff. UT has lost all credibility for its students. It is putting political agendas and profit over student safety and trust. Inviting DPS to invade our campus was just another political maneuver to villainize and intimidate us. We see right through you. We won't back down because our cause is just. We have been invigorated by the recognition from Bisan and the people of Gaza, spray painting their tents to thank us because they no longer have walls to write on. A peer who went to jail with us had this to say: although these violent arrests on students took place, we want to continue to highlight Gaza. Protest media is taking the place of the war crimes and genocide committed in Palestine. I am honored to stand with my people, but I do not want to take attention away from their oppression. We hope the media recognizes our fight for peace as opposed to a fight for violence. All eyes on Gaza. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest. Thank you. Okay. I'm reading one of the people who was also arrested, their speech. They want to remain anonymous, but their story is very important, so I will share it. When the protest began, I was one of the students urging people to disperse. And while dispersing the crowd, I was grabbed by riot police. Around 4 to 6 police officers pushed me down, ripped my kufiya off my head, threw it to the side, and handcuffed me in zip ties. My kufiya being wrapped off felt like a particular violation of my body and my person. Especially because I tend to wear my kufiya as a hijab. I do not recall whether a knee was placed on my back or not, but I was jostled and shoved with an unnecessary amount of force despite letting myself be arrested and not resisting whatsoever. I was not informed why I was being arrested or read my rights. For context, I am a 5'4", visibly Muslim woman of color, and I am not strong whatsoever. There were at least 2 to 3 grown men pinning me down, and the other 2 were white women. After we were placed in the van and arrived at Travis County Jail, we waited for a while in the processing area. Then we were taken to another room to change into uniforms. I felt extremely uncomfortable because the door was slightly open and people were walking by. When I asked the white female police officer if I could close the door, she denied my request and merely said no. This was particularly dehumanizing to me as a Muslim woman due to the values I hold in regards to modesty. I had to change knowing that people were walking by and could possibly see me, and although my back was turned to the door, I saw that she had looked at me while changing. There was also a male police officer standing nearby her while I was changing. Whether he saw me or not, I am not aware. This was already a humiliating process, and when I realized the sleeves of the uniform exposed more skin on my arm than I was comfortable, I had asked her if there was a long sleeve option because I was Muslim and religious modesty was important to me. The female officer stared at me with confusion and then said, "Why do you need it? You don't wear the headscarf." She meant hijab. I was shocked by the ignorance of the statement and began to say that not all Muslim women wear hijab, and I could not go out until I was provided proper religious accommodations. She became immediately angry and aggressive, roughly grabbed my arm and pulled me out. I was surrounded by 3 officers, and the male officer I mentioned previously attempted at grabbing me. In fear of him, because he was around 5'11" to 6'3", and he was one of the more intimidating officers, I shouted, "Don't touch me!" And the female officer roughly dragged me to a holding cell and threw me into solitary confinement. I was very shaken, but I was unable to understand as to why I was thrown into a holding cell in the processing area. I kept tapping the window, gesturing to officers to come, and they would ignore me. But I persisted and consistently spoke with multiple different officers who informed me they did not know why I was in solitary confinement. I began utilizing the intercom system to communicate with police officers, who, after I used it several times due to many of them ignoring me, came in person to inform me, despite me not knowing, that the intercom was only meant to be used if I had a heart attack or another emergency. I explained to this specific officer the situation that happened. He told me, you don't have all your rights in jail. When I was taken out of the cell to speak to pretrial attorneys and then later placed back into solitary confinement, police officers handcuffed me with metal handcuffs because I was too rowdy. I'd been placed in solitary confinement for roughly 1 to 3 hours. When I spoke with attorneys about the situation, they spoke with the officers in front of me, to which they reportedly say, "It'll cost some money to get other clothing." Later on, when I finally consistently had communicated with police about my confinement, they let me sit with my comrades and I accounted what happened to them. When we were shifted to the area where we could make phone calls, my comrades angrily called attorneys and others advocated on my behalf, which resulted in police handing out sweaters to the women and other perceived women in our group. When I was moved to jail, I requested my post officer for a scarf to pray with which my post officer replied, "Just use a towel or a bed sheet." I am extremely traumatized from the events that occurred and will be seeking mental health assistance. I am suffering from severe body aches and being pushed and jostled by several grown men weighing hundreds of more pounds than me. I'm extremely dehumanized from the Islamophobia Travis County jail officers carried out against me. These tactics are from a long history of American policing originating from slave patrols, violence carried out against Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic communities. Tactics that IDF soldiers learn and use against Palestinians, side-by-side training that both U.S. police and IDF do together. We as students were traumatized, repressed, and bullied by a fascist administration that bent to the will of the tyrannical Zionist entity. I'm unable to properly study and prepare for my exams, and the university is responsible for this. My crime in the eyes of this university was supporting the people of Palestine. I was not suppressed, as many claim, because of the free speech, but because it was in support of Palestine. Zionist counters have doxed, harassed, and attempted to harm pro-Palestinian and Palestinian students multiple times, and the university has refused to acknowledge or mitigate any of these harms and continue to allow their violent and racist protests. 2 young Muslim men of Palestinian and South Asian origin, respectively, were hate crimes in West Campus, and the university did nothing to protect students. Most notably, last semester, Israeli soldiers threatened to kill Palestinian and Muslim students, and the university stood beside them, refusing to condemn what they did. UT Austin bends to the will of Zionist hegemony, and our only crime was reclaiming our university for the people of Gaza. My arrest has merely strengthened my faith in Allah. UT's paltry attempts at intimidating former student detainees in staying off campus and rumors of punishment shall not deter me or my comrades. Praying in prison without clean water, unable to access a hijab, completely terrified and alone, shakingly reciting Ayat ul-Kursi and mumbling verses of the Quran while abused and zip-tied, I was able to understand a sliver of the suffering that Palestinian prisoners have endured for decades, and this has only strengthened my resolve to fight for a free Palestine. The popular university will prevail. The students will prevail. We will reclaim our campus. We will achieve divestment, and Palestine will be free. I call for the students to rise and for the larger community of Austin and Texas to escalate in every way possible. We will not concede defeat. There is no way except forward. Forward to a community without policing, forward to a community where justice prevails, and forward to a community that will liberate Palestine. We will not let our community, our campus, our city fund the genocidal fascist Israeli entity. Thank you. I will now open the floor to questions. If you have any questions for me, if any of the members who spoke, they're all willing to answer questions.
Michael Anderson with CBS Austin. This is going to be, I feel like if anyone else has questions, it's going to be kind of just to anyone, any of the students. I'll start with one quick question that's just a yes or no. I imagine the reason that we're meeting here at the Capitol is because PSC has been suspended from campus. I imagine you guys can't meet on campus, is that correct?
Yeah, so the university, under the interim suspension, has stated that we should cease all activity. They were very vague about what that entails. We felt like coming to the Capitol was very symbolic, especially considering, the governor, Greg Abbott, and the police presence that was brought up by state troopers.
I'd love to then follow up with that. Just hearing from you guys, what has the communication been like from the university to you all about where you stand? Are you guys worried? I don't know what year you all are. If any of you were set to graduate, anything like that, is that all up in the air essentially?
Yeah, so I'm a fourth-year senior psychology pre-med student. I'm set to graduate in 2 weeks. I know many of our students here are also seniors. And it's very much been up in the air, there was a lot of arrestees got the tweet that, arrestees are suspended from campus, and then it's oh, just kidding, they're suspended from campus, but they can only come for academic reasons. But none of that was actually communicated to any of the arrestees. So I feel like it's very much like a scare tactic. It's fear mongering. We as PSC haven't been getting clear communication with admin. We have emailed them asking to speak with them about the suspension, and we have not gotten a response back.
I have other questions, but I'm sure other reporters may want to ask you. All right, perfect. Never mind then. I'd love to ask, Amar, there's no normal way to say this. I spoke with your father on Thursday after you left the rally, and he kind of walked through what happened in those moments. And I was there. I saw your arrest as it happened on Wednesday, but I'd love to talk with you about those moments. It was communication, it looked like, at least from the outside, of authorities coming to you saying, it's time to disperse. You would turn around, say, here's what we need to do. And then at one point, it looked like you turned around and said, I've done what I can, but that's when they arrested you. I'd love to hear from your perspective what happened.
So, sorry. Yeah, apologies. No, I think I'm okay. Yeah, so the officers, they gave us an order to disperse on 3 occasions. The first time was when we were marching. They stopped us on Speedway, proceeded to box us in from the front and the back, told us we were in violation of a penal code for blocking a roadway, which we told them, okay, it's crazy because you're preventing us from moving. So the first order to disperse was ordered, and we were told to move south on Speedway. That's where they gave the second order to disperse. They gave us 10 minutes to do so. We told the crowd that we had to disperse to avoid arrest. But the only avenue they gave us to disperse to was to go on the sidewalk and then back to Speedway. So I told them, this is absurd because, you know, it's not really a dispersal. You're not allowing us to do a dispersal because everyone's just going to congregate again because there's only one way to leave. And then soon after that, people were dispersing. Me and other organizers assumed that people were dispersing. You know, we had followed directives, and the crowd recongregated without us. And you know, I heard from my dad then that it had recongregated and the police were threatening arrest. And so then I went up and I repeated again that we needed to disperse because we really wanted to avoid arrest, and that's the video that's been circulating. And my communication with that officer in particular is the one we had been communicating with, you know, for the duration of the march. And I reiterated, as you can see in the video, that we're just not being allowed to comply. And I think what this demonstrated is that even when we try to comply, it doesn't matter, right? Because this was a premeditated, I mean, everything about it just seems like a premeditated attempt at suppressing the voice, and a premeditated attempt at making an example out of me, out of PSC, right? We were trying to act in compliance, and it did us nothing. They still arrested me. The crowd seemed like it was dispersing, and they still proceeded to escalate, right? So it's all on the university for calling in that force. It's on the UT police for abusing their power and making unlawful arrests. In which all the charges have been dropped because there's been no probable cause, as stated by a judge in Travis County Jail. And so it's the complete responsibility of our university for calling in this force and for those police to then escalate the situation.
Will the PSC continue for the rest of the semester to do some events, regardless of what the university says, or the Muslim Student Association, or?
Yeah, so we as PSC continue, you know, this is very much a scare tactic, as we've seen, and as Ahmed has said, you know, like, this is preemptive censorship. We were very clear about our intents, and despite that fact, they still decided to come in full force, and we are planning on meeting again. Like, we sent an email discussing to the Dean of Students, asking to talk about the suspension, and we've gotten no response, and we see that as, again, their attempt to silence us, and we just won't let that stand.
If I can, one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
The statement that the university put out, I believe this was on Thursday, obviously a lot happened, and my days may be mixed up, but I believe it was on Thursday. The university in a statement made a point of saying that just under half of the folks arrested were, I believe their word were outside groups, that these were non-students essentially. I'd love to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Adam has a lot of information about the arrestees, who they were. He has the full name, so I'll let him speak more to that.
All right. Just real quickly, which publication are you from?
With CBS Austin.
CBS Austin. Okay. You know, I'm sure you guys have already spoken to UT. You've gotten a statement from them. I've read an article from you guys, and UT put their arrest number at around 55 when they spoke to you. But I helped organize jail support night of, along with the Austin Lawyers Guild and CAIR, and we have a list of 65 people who were actually arrested. So it's worth mentioning that the University of Austin didn't correctly identify the complete number of people who were arrested. They were off by 10 people who were arrested. That does include both students and community members. Regarding that, PSC is not just a campus organization. We do serve our campus primarily, but also the greater Austin area. We do put protests on here at the Texas Capitol. We don't just define or constrict our engagement to just the student body at UT, but also, around the greater Austin area.
So, the criticism then is that these were not folks from the university, is essentially what UT said. These are half of these people that we detained were not even affiliates of the university. Criticisms that again, the word that they used, I believe, was outside groups, which is, a common thing that we hear when we talk about, bigger power. That was one of the reasons that they cited for preemptively calling in the Department of Public Safety. Is there any reaction to that?
Right. So the University of Texas is an open campus. It's a government university here at the here in Texas. That allows anybody in or out of public areas on campus. That includes the South Lawn. That includes Speedway. That includes almost any outside public area of the university. People from the Austin community are allowed to walk through UT as they please, as long as they don't enter or exit any buildings before closing hours. On October 12th, we were, attacked by a group of former IDF soldiers and Zionists who had actually entered a building on campus. UT told us that these people were allowed to be on campus when we actually tried to, file a complaint with the university saying that we were attacked by 3 Zionists on campus. They told us these people have a right to be on campus because UT is an open campus and it is a public institution. So I don't understand why UT is now suddenly drawing a line and telling us that people from the Austin community are no longer allowed on campus at a time of 12 or 1 or 2, when they allowed, people who obviously came with the intention of disruption against students into a locked building where they also disturbed people who were about to take an exam.
Question: what the percentage of non-students were arrested? Is the majority student?
So the majority of people arrested were not students. I think it was a pretty even distribution, but we'll have to check and see again. We have that list available, and we'll try and get that answer.
Adam, could I?
Can you tell us your name and spell it before we leave this point right here, just so we get your name right?
Yeah, Adam, A-D-A-M. Do you need a last name? Okay, Elhamdi, E-L-H-A-M-D-I.
I just wanted to point out that a lot of community members came in to protect the students. I don't know if you saw the photos and the videos, but the students that were arrested were about my height, were skinnier than me, were younger than me, and I'm not a very intimidating figure. So I commend any community members that stepped in to protect the people that they are supposed to protect. Community is supposed to protect the youngest ones. I commend Hannah. Thank you. And I don't think we should be shaming people who are defending our students and the right to protest of genocide.
Thank you, Star. Yeah, any other questions, guys? Please, feel free.
Just before we go live for Al Jazeera Arabic, so what's next? Given all the atmosphere, I don't want to repeat these words. So what's next? What we gotta see in the next 3, 4, 5 days, that's South Lawn.
Well, PSC's made a commitment to not go quiet. I think what's most important is not to bend to the tactics of bullying and intimidation that the university has used to crack down on students for using their First Amendment right on campus, which is well within our right. We will continue to use our voices to amplify the needs of Gazans and to call out a genocide, and to call the university to divest from major arms producers like Boeing, like Raytheon, like Lockheed Martin, which the University of Texas is heavily invested in. These are the same companies that are producing the bombs that are being dropped on civilians in Gaza. We've also called on the university and on Jay Hartzell to resign after he authorized the use of DPS to brutally crack down on his students for, using their First Amendment right on campus, which again we are allowed to do, and for the amnesty of all students who were arrested to not face further consequences or disciplinary actions from the university or legally.
One of the main arguments is that Jewish students of Jewish faith are feeling really attacked, the narrative. Can you assure people this is really it's not the intention? Is it your intention, in fact, to scare the Jewish friends and believers?
The only person who's scaring the Jewish community here at UT Austin is Jay Hartzell and Greg Abbott. We had Jewish students protesting with us right here. The only person who's putting our Jewish students at risk in the UT Austin community are Jay Hartzell and Greg Abbott, the same people who authorized the use of the DPS against Jewish and Muslim students on campus.
Also, a point to be made is that despite the presence of the counter-protesters and their attempts to agitate us, we did not engage with them, we did not touch them, we did not, we did not fall into their tactics. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we did not fall into their tactics of intimidation or trying to engage in incite. Sorry about that. But, yeah. Okay, that will conclude the Q&A. The speakers will be available afterwards for questions, but I just want to do a few closing remarks to, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It was part of my speech, but I had to cut time. The only anti-Semitic, I did not witness these comments, but I've heard from multiple members of JVP, the only anti-Semitic comments that were made to them were by the Zionist counter-protesters, calling them kapos, which were Jewish prisoners in Nazi Germany who were forced to look over and supervise other prisoners. So that was the only anti-Semitism that I heard about occurring within the event.
Shame.
Okay, so to close off, I want to remind everyone here today, what happened on Wednesday is a part of the larger context of a nationwide effort to silence pro-Palestinian student voices. Their scare tactics are a desperate attempt to intimidate us, but we will not stand down. We will not let them silence our voices. We shall not be moved. We must not forget why we are protesting here today. Today marks the 206th day of the genocide in Gaza. Rafah, the supposed safe zone, is being bombed as I speak. Mass graves are being dug up from under the rubble. Palestinians in the West Bank are being abducted in night raids. I want to reiterate the demands of the Palestine Solidarity Committee, the students, and the community. One, that UT Austin divest from death. UTIMCO invest millions of dollars in weapon manufacturer companies complicit in the genocide in Gaza. Disclose, divest. 2, the university provides full amnesty to PSC, the unsuspension of PSC, and amnesty to students who were arrested in the most abhorrent ways. And 3, the resignation of UT Austin's president, Jay Hartzell, who the community has lost faith in, as seen by the over 500 faculty signatures on the no confidence statement, and that is growing by the second. The student voices will not be stifled. All eyes on Gaza, all eyes on Rafah, all eyes on Palestine now. Free Palestine from the river to the sea. Free, free Palestine!
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 I want to thank everyone again, and once again, the speakers are available to questions, interviews, so thank you again for being here and letting us platform our voices.
Are you looking for the list?
Nice one.
It's so good. I'm so proud. That's crazy. No, because we were in there at the same time. I know. I don't know like how. It's about the arrested officers and when they put in the affidavit.
So anyone who was arrested by that one of the
I wasn't arrested.
how are you doing? Is it Arwen?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. You know, I'm okay. Yeah.
Your picture's going around too.
Oh, the statue of liberty. Internationally, she's an international superstar. Oh my god. I've gotten so many media requests to Iran, and I'm like, you guys, I literally should not be the face of this. Please stop. Talk to somebody else.
That one. Totally forgot about my mom.
That statue feels it feels inappropriate.
Is that your GoPro? That's a tape.
Yeah, yeah. It made me look way better in the drawing